I hope that you guys are doing well. Get your Bibles out and go to Mark chapter 6. I mentioned earlier, if you missed it, we're not going to read it yet. I'll tell you when. I always give the text such a hard time. They never know when I'm going to actually do what I'm going to do. But you're doing a great job up there, Ryan. Keep it up. I'm so excited. Today is Compassion Sunday. If you don't know what Compassion Sunday is, it's a chance for us to partner with over 7,000 churches across the country. That being said, we're going for a specific goal today. So the Spirit can move in a lot of general ways, but we have a specific desired outcome. You ever go to your class and your professor says, this is the desired outcome? When you leave, you're leaving with this. We have a desired outcome. Why would we dedicate an entire gathering to this? Why should we care about poor people on the other side of the planet? We've got poor people here, right? What do they have to do with us? Those are really good questions, and I've been thinking about those questions a lot recently and how to answer them. And I think this story in Mark 6 is really the perfect story. I think this story answers all of those questions and then many more questions. So I want to look at this story with you. I want to show you how it answers those questions and then ultimately even more. And then we'll see what God has for us. So Mark chapter 6, and we're going to read verses 30 through 44. This is really famous stories, the feeding of the 20,000. It says 5,000, but that's just the men, kids and women. So we'll just call it feeding of the 20,000. All right, you ready? All right, the apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. But many saw them going and recognized them. And they ran there on foot from all of the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "What? Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, How many loaves do you have? Go and see, find out." And when they had found out, they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish. Then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and he said a blessing. And he broke the loaves and he gave them to the disciples and set them before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate, and they were all satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. This story is all about compassion. What it is, what it does, what drives it, what tries to stop it, what keeps us from it. As we think about using our resources to help the poor, I think this story shows us why it's so important. There are 3 main things I want to highlight today, and then we're going to get to the kicker, which is the gospel. It's always the gospel, by the way. If it's not always the gospel, leave. Go to a different church. But 3 main things I want to highlight. First, Jesus saw the neediest people. Look at verse 34. When he went ashore, he saw. Circle that word, saw. He saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Your translation might say that Jesus was moved with compassion for them. Literally, compassion means to be moved so deeply inside of you that it's a guttural, intestinal experience. Like something happens physically inside, there's a churning, that the emotion is so deep that it impacts your organs. You ever felt that kind of emotion before? Of course you have. usually it's not when something good is happening. Okay, when good stuff's happening, the emotion's euphoria. When something really painful or agonizing is happening, it's a churning inside. It's almost like a sickness. That's what it means to be moved with compassion. It's the idea that from the bottom of his heart, he sees them and he feels for them. Now, what you have to understand about these people is that, guys, they were the neediest of the needy. I don't know what you picture when you picture this scene. All of my pictures are flannel graph from kindergarten through like second grade. If you can't relate with that, you're probably for the better, okay? Because all of my Bible scenes are messed up because of flannel graph. I think when I picture this this scene, it's just lush, beautiful green grass, and everyone's happy and clean somehow, and fresh and very attractive. They're all attractive in flannel graph. But this is not how it was at all. These people were the neediest of the needy. They were the peasants. They had been worked cruelly. They'd been taxed heavily. They had been spied on constantly by King Herod. If you know anything about the background of this story, what has just happened leading up to this is King Herod has killed John the Baptist, who is their most beloved prophet. And so they're all in fear right now, and Herod's got all of his spies looking for any sign of dissent. Who else is going to be locked up? Threatened daily. Rome had oppressed them. Herod had neglected them. The religious leaders had exploited them. Now they see Jesus, their only hope, okay? They see Jesus get in a boat with his men, and they realize he's going to cross this 3-mile, I can't remember what the actual body of water was. It's 3 miles long, though. My memory is blanking right now. For them to beat him, to get to the other side before he got there, they would have had to have run 10 miles to get there. So they see their only hope trying to escape. He's trying to just take a break. He needs a vacation. And they book it 10 miles around whatever this body of water is to beat him there. 15 to 20,000 poor, ragged, exhausted, smelly, hungry, thirsty people waiting for Jesus to get to shore. And this is the thing I love about Jesus that I'm really not good at, and I would imagine most of you aren't either. When Jesus gets to shore, he sees them. He makes eye contact with them, and he doesn't look away. That's typically what I do. Every broken heart, every physical ailment, every emotional need, every spiritual problem. Guys, think about who was in this group. Every crippled child, every abused wife, every desperate father. Everything within him was moved by what he saw. It was a guttural churning of compassion. See, I think when it comes to the poor, I think when it comes to the needy, we have the tendency to look at them and then just as quickly as humanly possible, look away. Avoid eye contact. I can remember back in the day when I used to watch live TV. Anybody remember that? I'm going to tell my kids about this. I tell them about commercials. They don't understand. There were these things called commercials, though, which were basically like ads trying to get us to buy something or do something. Look it up on Google. They're a real thing. Every once in a while, these commercials would come up, and you know what I'm talking about. It was an organization in some third world country trying to get us to sponsor kids. And it would just be B-roll of the most destitute and tragic situations you could ever see. You know, you're talking about the naked baby with the bloated belly, the flies swarming them, surrounded by dogs and trash, and literally sometimes they're just laying on the dirt. They can't even move. They're basically just skeletons, and you're watching this B-roll, and these people are these kids are on the verge of death on the B-roll. And I can remember whenever these commercials would show up, I would change the channel as soon as I could. I didn't want to see it. Anybody relate with that at all? I hated those commercials because I saw those poor kids as problems to be avoided, not as people to be loved. And if you look at them, you're going to have to do something with them. And so we just don't look. Guys, you need to hear this. Compassion begins where we see the needs of people and refuse to look away. That's where compassion begins. When we stop avoiding the eye contact, when we stop pretending like their plight doesn't exist, you ever just block it out? That's not really happening all over the world. This is normal. Your wardrobe is normal. Your refrigerator is normal. Where you're going to eat after church today is normal. We just pretend like this is normal. Compassion begins when we stop pushing our way through so that we can just get on with our lives. Something moves within us because we see it. We don't look away. You feel that? These kids that are on our table out there, guys, they're desperate. They're in desperate need of help. They spend their days in dumpsters trying to scavenge for food or maybe some trash that they can sell for food. Many of them are orphans. Most of them are malnourished. All of them are at high risk of getting sick or being exploited. This is their reality. Tens of millions of these kids all over the world. Right now, their existence is literally hell on earth. And when I say literally, I actually mean literally. Do you know in the New Testament the word that Jesus uses for hell is Gehenna? Any of you ever done a word study on Gehenna? Gehenna literally means the city dump. So when Jesus talks about hell, he uses the word for city dump. And then he talks about it like this. He talks about eternal fire. When you go to these dumps in South America and in Asia, you know what's burning constantly? Trash. Just fire everywhere. He talks about the gnashing of teeth. If you go to these dumps, you'll see dogs everywhere gnashing their teeth as they fight over dead animals and trash. He talks about the stench of death rising up. If you've ever been to a city dump, you know. It doesn't smell good. He talks about hopelessness. He talks about destitution as these people are separated from the presence of God for all eternity. Guys, the closest picture we have of hell on earth is a city dump. That's where millions and millions of kids are living out their existence right now. This isn't normal. So we need to look at them. We need to see them until it does something to us and stirs something in us. And we say, not on our watch. We're going to do something about it. So this is the first thing I want you to see. Jesus saw the needy as people, not as problems, and he was moved with compassion. Second, Jesus saw his needs as peripheral. Verse 30, the apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. They've been working really hard, laboring for the kingdom. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest for a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no time even to eat. And so they went away in a boat to a desolate place by themselves. As they have been working so hard, helping and healing so many people that they didn't even have time to take a break for a snack. They didn't even have time to take a break for a rest. They're literally working themselves to the bone, and so Jesus plans a little vacation. Only it wasn't a vacation to a seaside resort. It wasn't some 5-star hotel. It was just a place in the desert where they could be alone and where they could eat and sleep in peace and quiet. So Jesus has planned this vacation for himself and for his disciples. Now, all of a sudden, their plans are shot. They get to the shore, they're exhausted, and all of a sudden they're greeted by 20,000 ravenous peasants, okay? Guys, I think most of us would have been a little ticked, a little angry if our plans were interrupted by this mob of peasants. I mean, just think about what happens when your plans from getting, from point A to point B on your morning commute get interrupted for like a second, Like somebody cuts you off and you're like, how could they? That just cost me 3 seconds, I think most of us would have been a little ticked off for our plans to be ruined by this mob. I think most of us would have seen them as an interruption, right? to what was really important: our rest, our break, our comfort, our vacation. I think the reason we would have been upset, actually I know this is the reason, is because we think our needs are central. Aren't you so glad you came to church today? We think our needs are central. We live in a culture that tells us all the time, we are numero uno. We are the masters of our own fate, the lords of our own destiny. We are the most important person in our world. And if people are trying to slow us down, just throw them off. I'm not really into the whole self-help genre. I know some of you are, so I'm going to try not to bash it too hard right now because, I got to be gentle in some things. But all of these self-help gurus are filling their books with ideas about how you are the most important person in your life. Your needs are supreme. Your desires are the greatest. Your goals, your dreams are the most significant. If you've got friends who don't support you, get rid of them. I've actually seen people who are like quote unquote Christian influencers write stuff like this. I say quote unquote because they're not actually Christian, by the way. If you've got coworkers getting in your way, run over them. If you've got people in your life who are hard to deal with, find new people. You are the central character in your story, and so your needs are number one. It's shocking to me, guys, how many people have bought into this philosophy who claim to be followers of the way of Jesus. Because this is the antithesis of the way of Jesus. I read one story this past week of how this philosophy is playing out in the world of mountain climbing. This was shocking to me. 1953, Everest was peaked. It was climbed for the first time by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. And 29,000-foot peak, huge deal, monumental feat. Since then, thousands of people have been following in their footsteps, and they've been scaling Mount Everest. Pretty incredible. By 2006, more than 2,700 people had reached the summit of the world's tallest mountain, and many of them paid $60,000 to do it. Good times. What has happened, though, has been absolutely staggering. In the rush to the top, all of these amateur rock climbers who have paid a small fortune for this incredible experience will do anything to reach their goal, including abandoning other climbers. David Sharp became a casualty in March of 2006. He's 34. He's just, right at my age. Engineer from Cleveland. He could be sitting in this church right now. And he managed to get to the summit on his own, and yet he ran out of oxygen on the way back. So he's literally laying dying on Everest, and 40 climbers passed him by. 40 climbers, so eager to achieve their own goals that they couldn't take a chance of offering their oxygen to someone else. And so David Sharp froze to death. One climber who scaled 14 of the world's 8,000-meter peaks, so he's a big deal. He says, people passing people who are dying is not uncommon. Listen to how he put it. Unfortunately, there are those who say, it's not my problem. I've spent all this money. I'm getting to the summit. This is the self-help stuff, guys. I remember when the pandemic was just starting, like back in March, a year past now, okay? Nobody knew really what it was. We just knew it was going to be the worst pandemic since 1918 and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't matter what you think about it now. None of us knew last March, okay? And we went into the lockdown, and all of these people who were talking about how you are the most important person in the world and you do you and don't worry about what anyone else has to say and don't make any decision based on anyone else, all of a sudden are saying, think about everyone else. Don't go out. Don't party. Well, nobody listened because all we've been told is that we just do whatever we want. We don't think about anyone else. Just a little ironic. Again, this is the antithesis of the way of Jesus. Jesus didn't view his need for rest. He didn't view his desire for a break as central. He's God. When weighed against the needs of others, his needs took the back seat. You want to know why we have such a hard time being moved with compassion for the poor and needy? First is because we don't see them. You know why we don't see them? Because all we see is ourselves. They're right in front of us in desperate need of someone to reach out a hand and lift them up, but all we see is our dream. All we see is our goal. All we see is our desires. All we see is our wishes. Because all we see is ourselves. I'm guilty of this, guys. To sponsor a kid for a month, it costs a little over $30. A little over $30 a month. Meg, what's the exact number? 38, thank you. That's a little over $370 a year, right? I'm not a mathematician. I think I'm close. I honestly struggle with this. I think that's money I could be saving. The economy is getting tough. Gas prices are going up. Groceries are going up. Lumber is going up. What if my car breaks down? What if I get sick and can't pay my bills? What if I don't put enough money into my retirement? What if I'm going to be stranded out there? I don't know what's going to happen. $38 is money that I could save. It's money I could use. It's money I could spend. And then I think about my family. $38 is a babysitter for like 2 hours. Okay, great gig. Just watch Netflix. That's a date with my wife I'm not going to be able to take. Right? I think about that. $38 is essentially a family meal at Chick-fil-A. That's a meal we're not going to have. Doesn't God care about my family time? $38 is a night at the movies. It's an experience I'm not going to be able to enjoy with my family. Doesn't God want me to have family? Doesn't He want me to be a good dad and a good husband? These are the things I think about. These are the things you think about. If I am the central character in my story, and my desires and my dreams are primary, there will always be an endless list of reasons why I shouldn't help anybody else. Jesus could have gotten to shore, could have stepped foot on that dry ground, could have looked right through that mob of 20,000 people to the vacation on the other side, that oasis, which was just a desert. And he could have just put his head down and he could have plowed right through to get where he wanted to go, but he didn't because his needs were peripheral. Third, Jesus saw their need as personal. This is where it gets really weighty because this is where we see the response of compassion. Compassion causes us to see the needs of others and then take personal responsibility for them. And I know this isn't capitalism, okay? But the way of Jesus, the way of the theocracy, even in the Old Testament, was you have poor people among you. Take care of them. Take personal responsibility for their plight. Look back at verse 35. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages so that they can buy themselves something to eat." That's logical, right? That makes sense. That's not cruel. He doesn't say send them away so that they can starve. He says send them away so that they can provide for themselves. What does Jesus say? But he answered them, "You give them something to eat. You take responsibility. You own it. Their need is now your personal project. You give them something to eat. Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them to eat? And he said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. And when they had found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. What's happening in this exchange is the disciples see the hunger of the people. They see the need of the people. But their response is to send them away to fend for themselves. This is our natural response. This is actually survival of the fittest. Nature is red in both tooth and claw. You know this quote, right? Compassion does not exist in nature. You fend for yourself, and if you can't fend for yourself, you die, and the strong take your place. Verse 36, the disciples say this very thing. Let them take care of themselves. Let them fend for themselves. Verse 37, Jesus puts them in their place, and he says, no, I got a different way for you. I want you to feed them. 20,000 people in the middle of nowhere. Get to work. Take care of it. Now, they're shocked, obviously. We'd all be shocked. They're trying to do the math. They're trying to figure out how much it's going to cost to feed everyone. They realize it's impossible. There's no way to accomplish this thing. So he tells them, go look in the people, see what they have amongst themselves. Maybe they found something. Maybe they brought something. They come back with 5 little wafers, 2 sardines. And again, you know the story. And he said, that's enough. And this is really, really profound, and it's really powerful. It's so fascinating to me. He says, that's enough. You see, Jesus wanted them to take responsibility for something that he knew they didn't have the resources for. It's really fascinating to me. Why would he do that? Jesus wanted them to own it. Their need is your need. And yet he knew that they couldn't do it without him. Look, what we have isn't enough. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough bread. We don't have enough fish. What can we do? How are we supposed to accomplish anything? Guys, I think we have the tendency of looking at tens of millions of kids globally, scavenging in dumpsters in Gehenna. And I think we think, how in the world are we supposed to take care of that? How are we supposed to feed them? We don't have enough food. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough resources. And yet, God wants us to view their need as our personal responsibility. We don't get to pass it off to politicians. We don't get to pass it off to officials. We don't get to pass it off to the wealthy. We don't get to pass it off to the humanitarian charities. We don't get to pass it off to other religions. The people of Jesus follow the way of Jesus, and the way of Jesus is the way of compassion. Seeing other people's needs and owning them, making them personal. And this is the truth, and this is the amazing truth. God actually has the resources. I want you to think about it like this. God created everyone. I think we could all agree on that. Unless you're a skeptic here, I'm so glad you're here. God created everything. God created everyone, and he loves everyone. So if God loves everyone, do you think that God created enough food to feed everyone? Yeah. God created everyone. God loves everyone. So God created enough food to feed everyone. So why doesn't he give that food to everyone? Why are there kids scavenging in dumpsters right now? You ever ask that question? This story shows us, guys. God has provided enough food. He's given enough resources for every person in the world, the entire world, to be fed. But for some reason, in his divine wisdom and his divine providence, instead of telling the poor to go figure it out, to fend for themselves, he tells his followers to do it for them. Instead of giving food directly to them, he gives the food to his people so that they can give it out themselves. Did you notice that in this story? Jesus could have done a massive assembly line, Salvation Army style. Everyone comes up, gets their food. He doesn't do that. He gives all of this food to his 12 disciples, and he says, all right, 20,000 people, hand it out. This is how Jesus works. He calls us his people to care for everyone he loves and has compassion on. Again, guys, I don't consider myself wealthy. I know most of you would not consider yourselves wealthy. Some of you are very wealthy. And yet, we're wealthy. We're really wealthy. My fridge is stocked. I actually have 2 fridges. Guys, Jesus saw the needy as people. He saw his needs as peripheral, and he saw their needs as personal. We've been called to follow in his footsteps. Amen? There's an even deeper meaning behind this story that shows us an even deeper motivation behind his compassion, and this is how I want to close. We're about to go to the table, and this is all about the table. Let me show you this. The deepest motivation, what still drives our compassion today, is really centered around this concept of bread. And we don't have time to get all into this. I actually preached this passage months ago in John 6. If you want to check it out again, you can. For us Americans, bread is nothing. It has no deep meaning. It has no deep significance. Bread is carbs, okay? And so if you're on keto, if you're on paleo, if you're on any diet, bread is bad. That's the only thing we think of when we think of bread. There's no significance to it whatsoever. But for the Jews, bread was deeply symbolic. Bread, so they didn't have lots of different kinds of food back then, especially if you were a peasant. So if you had food, you had bread. And if you had bread, you wouldn't starve. Bread was synonymous with life. In fact, bread was life. It was a symbol of bread. That's why when Jesus shows up, he said, "Man cannot live by bread alone, but by the word of God." Bread is life. So Jesus gets out of the boat. He comes face to face with the crowd, and he's moved by their hunger. And yet in John 6, which, again, months ago, can't unpack it all, running out of time. After he does this miracle, you know what they say to him? They say, "Keep feeding us this bread. Give us this bread always. We'll never have to search for food again." And then he says, "You want bread that perishes? I came to give you bread that'll never spoil. I am the bread of life. Whoever eats my body," this is weird, but if bread is life and he's the bread of life, it makes sense. "Whoever comes to me for life will be satisfied forever." So Jesus is looking at this crowd of 20,000 people, and he's moved with compassion, but it's not mainly because of their spiritual hunger or physical hunger. I just ruined it. It's mainly because of their spiritual hunger. He isn't just moved to the very core of his being because of their physical poverty. He's moved to his core because ultimately they are destitute spiritually. So what does he do? He starts feeding them. He tells them to lie down on the grass like good shepherds do. He makes me lie down by still waters. He restores, the Good Shepherd passage, he makes them lie down in green pastures. And then he starts teaching them the word of God. He starts feeding their souls. He's feeding them the gospel of life. Before he ever satisfies their stomach, he wants to satisfy their souls. Everlasting satisfaction. And this is what I really want you to see. The sign of the bread, this miracle, okay? It's an incredible miracle. The sign of the bread is ultimately a sign pointing to his death. In fact, in verse 41, if you want to look at it, I don't have it on the screen, but if you look back at verse 41, the text shows us this explicitly. It says, "Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he said a blessing and broke the bread. How does that show us what he's talking about? How does that point us to his death, you might ask? Well, in the Greek, those two verbs, bless and broke, they're two verbs. Bless and broke. They're really important because they show up in 8 chapters in Mark chapter 14. You know what happens in Mark chapter 14? They're huddled together in this upper room and they're celebrating Passover, and they've got a bread and they've got the wine, and Jesus breaks the bread and he says a blessing, and then he says, "This is my body that's broken for you. Eat in remembrance of me." This sign in Mark 6 is pointing to what's going to happen in Mark 14. And then the next night he's going to hang on a cross and he's going to bless his enemies as they break his body. This sign is all about the cross. This is what he came to do. Guys, if you've seen Christ on the cross as the bread of life broken for you, which I hope you have, if you've seen Christ as the one who was torn to pieces so that your soul might feast and be satisfied and saved forever, if you've been the recipient of his compassion and his mercy and his grace, you cannot help but extend it to others. And so when it comes to these kids living in the slums, our goal isn't just to give them a warm meal and send them on their way. Our goal is that they would hear this gospel and meet this Jesus and be satisfied and redeemed and forgiven and welcomed as sons and daughters in his family, forever satisfied. Compassion International is just one way we can do this, guys. I'm going to give you an opportunity to bow your head, close your eyes, talk to God. Maybe the Spirit's showing you another way. Maybe he's putting someone on your heart right now who's in need, and you know you need to take care of it. Maybe the Spirit's showing you something about how you view yourself and your desires, and you need to take care of that. Maybe the Spirit's calling you to sponsor a child. Bow your heads and listen. Ask God what this text requires of you, and do it. Then I'll lead us to respond, and we'll go to the table together. Just take a minute.